going to lean on my colleagues to stay on camera and continue the conversation running while I move from here to my car, as I've got an appointment to be at, but I'm looking forward to talking on audio while driving. So I am still on the line and would love to hear thoughts about mobile home park use.
Hi, this is Emily. I asked that question, and just to be honest, I'm actually really not familiar with this program as it exists at DOH currently. So I was looking more for information on how it works now, and then if it's going to change at all with this increase in funding.
I can jump in here while Andrew's transitioning. So kind of how it's happened. The projects we've had in the past where we've assisted with this have been through our normal gap funding. And so there's, lessons learned that we have gauged from that, but primarily we've assisted with acquisition and infrastructure. Doing those both at the same time kind of complicates it because there's a much larger kind of cost estimates and things that we're looking at when the infrastructure comes in. But with the acquisition, we've had, I think, 4 projects now where we have awarded funds to get these co-ops up and assisted with purchasing their mobile home park. But some of the nuances that go with that is, I know most of the projects we've worked with have partnered with Thistle and Rock USA. We haven't really had an example yet where that model hasn't been a part of the financing, but essentially they get that loan from Rock Home USA. We put in a low interest loan as well to help assist with the acquisition. And then the co-ops putting together their bylaws and kind of rules that are going to ensure that long-term affordability. And we also place a use covenant on top of them, but truly are looking at these co-op members too to follow their bylaws and kind of keep their community affordable to the folks that are living there.
Thank you for that, Ariel. This is Susanna with Boulder County. We're really interested in this topic too with the Prop 123 funds. It's a priority for us, so we're investing quite a bit of funds in acquisition of mobile home parks. So do you envision the Prop 123 supporting as a grant or as a grant or a loan? Because we have found that the loan, even though it's low interest, is still a barrier for a lot of the co-ops.
Andrew, are you back on? Because I think I would on this one. Are you great?
Yep, I am. Hopefully you all can hear. Yep. Hopefully
Okay.
you all can hear. That I would love to hear pros and cons, or what are the barriers when offered as a loan? And I mean, clearly the pros of a grant are obvious, but I'd love to hear from you as to why you think we ought to offer these resources that way, as we're really in the information gathering stage now. We have not yet made policy or guidelines. So love to hear from you, Susanna.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we know we're trying to get creative on our end. We know that a lot of times DOLA will grant the funds to a government agency, for example, and how can we turn around and give those funds as a grant to an ROC property? So we're just trying to maybe see if we can cut out the middle person, as Boulder County, for example, being that middle person, and trying to figure that out legally on our end. It's a lot of staff time. It's a lot of contract writing. And I mean, just being able to cut us out, that alone would be a time saver for us, certainly capacity and efficiency at the county level.
Thanks. Looks like Emily and Megan have their hands up as well.
I just have, I guess, quick follow-up feedback on the subject of mobile home park acquisition. I would advocate for as rapid deployment of funding as possible, just given the 90-day first right of refusal for residents of mobile home parks. It's really challenging for people to, one, form a co-op, and then two, to be able to to piece together all of the funding required to purchase these really inflated inflated expensive parks. So I think that's important. And I'd also be curious to know if there's any possibility of housing authorities or other entities being able to acquire that funding. One thing that Yampa Valley Housing Authority did last fall was have the right of first refusal transferred to the housing authority so that the housing authority could purchase the park on behalf of the residents. And then we anticipate a kind of like 3-year period where we'll invest in the infrastructure, and then the residents will form a co-op and acquire it back from the housing authority. But that just bought really important time when this park was listed for sale. So just kind of acknowledging the challenges of pulling this off in 90 days. I think it's a major barrier.
Just to comment on that, Emily, with the newest bill that was passed in October 1st, it is now 120-day timeline instead of 90 days. So you have 120 days to make that offer to the original owner, and then 120 days now to get that financing. Still, I know is not a lot of time with how long these items take, but just know there is a little bit more time with the effect of October 1st, along with being able to pass over that first right of refusal to a housing authority or local government.
Okay, that's great, but 120 is still really short.
Certainly. No, and thank you again. Want to draw and gather as much of this feedback as possible.
Megan.
Thanks. I would just advocate that if the mobile home park acquisition, for all of the reasons that were just brought up, maybe it's just viewed as an addition to the revolving loan fund for acquisition of mobile home parks that was established through Senate Bill 160. Just to the points that were already brought up, it would really create efficiencies in timeline, potential to cut out a lot of the middle agency need, and potentially already flow into a vehicle that's being established as we speak, as well as not limiting those funds just to ROC eligibility, but other nonprofit like housing authorities, like land trusts, or other 501c3s that have set up for the purpose of running a mission-minded mobile home park structure. So that would just be my 2 cents. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And if I can paraphrase what I heard, I do hear maybe some advocacy or suggestion that we not necessarily recreate things with these additional funding sources, but perhaps if they have an overlapping eligible use, add them to existing programs to either create more capacity or maybe some economies of scale and essentially not reinvent the wheel. And I can see where you're going with that on the mobile home park acquisition. And perhaps there are other programs that we can think of similarly.
Absolutely. You paraphrased beautifully. Thank you.
Nicole, your hand is up.
Yes, hi. I'm asking this question on behalf of City of Lafayette. My understanding is existing affordable housing counts in our baseline. So if we were to use these funds in order to help a co-op purchase their manufactured home park, it wouldn't add to our 3%. So we would have to work on additional housing. Is that correct?
I am going to look to Connor Everson, who may be joining us, who is works on our team that's primarily dealing with the commitments and qualifications for local governments.
How we're looking at this on the homeownership side is it depends on the program. For down payment assistance program is never included in a baseline or a commitment because no permit will be issued. The baselines just look at permit issuance as the bar for success. if you have a homeownership development program that may be included in the baseline, but only if the homeownership units which are developed result in a permit that's affordable at the level that is set by the locality in the baseline. I know that was a little confusing, but it's possible for affordable homeownership units to be developed in the program that are not actually considered as affordable for the purpose of the baseline and the commitments.
Any other comments or questions? I don't see any in the chat. Looks like we have still about 8 minutes left.
I'd love to perhaps throw out a discussion topic, knowing that the statute has limitations up to 120% of AMI for down payment assistance opportunities and 100% of AMI for kind of development opportunities. It seems to me that just simple math might say there are, you could see the pros and cons to having programs that try to reach deeper affordability, which is great, but inherently likely help fewer people than those that try to reach that 100 to 120% level of affordability and can reach more people. Are there pros and cons? Have folks thought about this in terms of either reaching the deepest affordability for kind of equity and opportunity ideas, as opposed to kind of that mid-tier affordability to create, which might help create that kind of continuum or stair step towards health and equity and affordability? Just curious about that. That's something that I've always wondered what the merits are for either. Might not be a hot topic, and that's okay.
I'll chime in. I just didn't want to because I've already asked a lot of questions. I think, Andrew, to your point, making sure that there's opportunity across the affordability spectrum, especially when it comes to homeownership, is really important as we struggle with just the lack of inventory. And so if those that were prior in a 60 to 80% AMI household range, income range, don't have anything to move up to in a 100 to 120% AMI range, then they'll likely stay in, as far as market availability of inventory, they'll likely stay put because there isn't anything bridging the traditional products at 80% or less AMI and what the market is, has to bear at this time. So I think it's really important that it's not only about the deepest affordability, but that we're also helping that middle tier so that we can move the continuum of folks through the ladder of affordability, rather than creating its own kind of cliff effect for home ownership, where there's nowhere to go because the assistance drops off at 80% or 100% AMI, really creating those opportunities at each level so that there isn't a big jump between. Be my 2 cents.
I have another thing to add to that. I have a question. What's the easier play? Because if you're looking at the price of, what it costs to build today, and also, our interest rates keep going up, 120 might be a bigger pool. So are we going to restrict ourselves to this very laser constraint of getting an 80% AMI deal done when I could easily have done 120 or more easily done 120? I feel like you need to do as much supply as fast as you can, any way you can. We'll, fix the plane while we're flying it, but at this time, especially considering MIHA, who's going to have 140% AMI options, and they're going to be looking at tenant vehicle, equity vehicle opportunities. It feels like we should try to dovetail with that mid-range a little bit more with this money.
Thank you all for your comments and perspectives, and would love to hear anybody else's thoughts. That's Megan, I think, brought up a point, something I was just thinking about this morning in terms of supply at that middle level, might free up supply at the lower level as people have the opportunity to move up. So it could have more than one bang for the buck. But these are just thought ideas. It's certainly not policy I'm advocating for, but I do appreciate different people's perspectives on this. I have also thought, about where state financing or funding can have a multiplying effect, and wonder from this group. It's always occurred to me or felt like the state being able to provide upfront, short-term, whether it's land acquisition or construction financing at higher leverage, lower rates, that will be paid back so it can recycle itself. Might be able to, especially in this interest rate environment, provide some real cost savings while also be able to be reused, every 18 months for different projects and different projects. It feels to me like the state's ability perhaps to offer some low rate friendly and higher leverage financing, maybe on the back of traditional bank financing. So second mortgage, high leverage at low rate, might be able to have a multiplying effect and help the overall cost structure.
Andrew, it's Paul Major. I couldn't agree more. I think the leadership of the state to provide creative capital will attract there's a whole bunch of other capital out there, whether it's from philanthropy or other pockets that the Treasury might have. But there's a lot of pockets of capital. What we don't need is expensive capital. There's no money to be made in building affordable housing. So we've got to attack the cost of capital, and what the state and what DOLA and DOH is doing now is fantastic. Can we multiply that by bringing in other sources at the same terms? So I think that's a great idea.
Certainly happy to hear from others who disagree, that maybe one-time grant funding to ensure permanent affordability might be the way to go. I recognize that there are different sides to every coin, so don't feel shy if you disagree with anything that or discussion topic that we're throwing out there.
We have about a minute left, so we'll love to hear any last minute comments, feedback. Well, we appreciate all of you joining us in this breakout session and sharing your comments, your questions. It's super helpful as we're in the early stages of kind of figuring out how things will be rolled out down the road. So really good information, really good discussion that was had, I think, in all three breakout sessions. And we're at time, so we'll see you all in the main session.